So Matt, I think we've seen quite a lot of your talents and versatility in the film, but obviously there's a sort of a bit of a gap between the then Matty and the now Matt, where you've worked as a filmmaker, an artist, a performer, a musician, and worked on all kinds of different projects. Could you just start by giving us a little bit more context about kind of you?
No.
Okay.
That's a really big question.
Yeah.
I'm going to cut this together. So what we had in our audience tonight was 4 people. We're at Hackney Picture House in London, one of the world's great capitals, and we had 4 people, and I'm very, very happy that those 4 people came, obviously. And I went off to have a beer and have a think about things, and I thought, what is it that I do? So this is to answer your question.
Yeah.
It's to to respond creatively to situations of adversity and difficulty, and that's what filmmaking should be, I think. It's a responsive, collaborative, live thing. So on the camera there we've got Niall, who was just moments ago in the audience, and he's now filming us.
Yeah.
And he's a student of cinematography at Ravensbourne.
Cool.
And so we're making another film.
Yeah.
And that's what I do. That's
so the spontaneity sort of comes out of the situations you find yourself in.
Yeah, it's I would say I use creative means to navigate life, and life's chaos, isn't it? Basically, and we try and make sense of it through finding connections between things, and that's what this film is attempting to do in a self-reflexive way, is to make sense of my own experience and include family into that.
Yeah, sure. So it's an experimental sort of artistic practice, and I think we can see that the film's sort of creative, it's painful, it's funny, and there are multiple story strands that kind of form a matrix, interlock, and you go in one direction, come back, go in another, and so on. How far did this come out of the way that you it's spontaneity, as you just mentioned, or how far had you kind of planned how all the different elements would fit together? Yeah,
how did it come about? Well, it was over more than 10 years that it came together. Obviously, I wasn't filming for 10 years. The very first impulse was I had the tape, and I was like, I need to do something with this tape. So the first idea for a project actually was a covers project. Right. So I was going to invite the hippies to reform, all of us in our late 40s, early 50s, and then invite favourite artists of ours to cover hippie songs, and then we would cover theirs in return. And around that time there was I had a MySpace page. Remember MySpace?
Yeah.
Do you remember MySpace?
They won't.
No, it was rubbish. You're so lucky to have avoided that. Anyway, it was a place, some early version of a social media platform. And hippies had a MySpace page, and then this band from Switzerland, Lausanne, got in touch, and they were called Luft, and they said, we really like Dallas City Goes, can we do a cover? I said, yeah, sure, that's an honour, thank you, please do it. And then I thought, hang on, if they're doing a cover of the song, maybe I should go over there and film them doing it. And that's where and I didn't do that in the end, but that's where the filming idea started. And then really since then it's been through a number of iterations to get where it is now, where it's ended. But I would say underlining all of that is a sense of play, improvisation. I like to sort of create an environment of benign chaos in which things can happen, but people feel safe to sort of do shit and muck around, and then the key thing is to be prepared to capture it.
Yeah.
And that's where I'm very lucky with Ian Dodds, the cinematographer.
No, that was absolutely fantastic. So, what you're doing here is bringing in this group of kids from the Scottish Youth Theatre to come in and reenact. And what I think is such a sort of great pleasure of the film is to see their experimentation in doing that. So, where did that idea kind of develop out of, and how did you work with them on a daily basis?
So that was yet another process. So we it was this idea, well, we need to find 3 kids to play the hippies, and then these 18 kids put themselves forward, and I just thought, they're all brilliant, so let's just include all of them. But we didn't tell them in the casting that actually they were all were going to be in the film, so they're all bringing their strongest acts to be the chosen ones. And then in fact they all were included as the hippies. And the reason we have this band Generation Riot is those 3 kids just by chance couldn't make one of the key rehearsals, and the production manager said, I'm sorry, Matt, we're going to have to let them go. And I said, there's no way we're letting them go. Can't we find an alternative? So we met up with them in a cafe and discussed it. And they said, well, we could make like a rival band. That would be really cool.
So that was their idea.
Yeah, so
that's amazing.
I mean, so much. I mean, this is a true story in a sense that so many of the ideas you see there come from the performers, or they're based on songs or poems that we wrote as kids, or drawings, or all of the material is true. I've not really invented anything apart from my songs, which are written in response to things, and I've written new material, but you're seeing like the material of our lives adapted in one way or another, or sometimes just literally like the hippies record cover or whatever. So whatever you're feeling as you watch this is hopefully, what I hope is that you're getting something of the feeling of what it was like to be us in that family in that time.
Well, I think that's, I mean, maybe it's a generation thing, but there's certainly things that chimed with me. For instance, the rabies song. There was definitely a moral panic about rabies in the late 70s. It was like TV information films.
It had very strong racial
it was very xenophobic.
And immigration ideas, and it was pretty horrible actually.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then people in the playground were like,
No, definitely. So there's definitely things that chime, and the way that family tensions and that particular phase of kind of feminism, and it definitely chimed with me, and we can ask the others in a moment how they felt. It was like whether it was could have been the invasion of William the Conqueror, because of the distance of time. But so you've got this great smorgasbord of material that you've created, from your history, from what the kids have brought in, from other things, new work that you've made, the performance that you set up with your sister and your mum and the other friends and so on. So how on earth did you decide how the structure was going to work and bring it together into a feature-length film? Because it must have been a huge amount of material. Yeah,
well, that unfortunately, my dear editor Nick Curry isn't here tonight because he's got the lurgy, the contemporary rabies. He has the contemporary rabies, which is a shame because he's better positioned to talk about the edit. It was a lot of material. I can't remember how many hours, but hundreds of hours. And our early our early first assembly was something like 4 hours, and that had a lot more kids in it than you see here, because both Nick and I were really taken by the young people, but we showed that back to the producers, and they said, oh, you're just soft on them because you don't have kids yourself. We've got kids, we just think they're boring.
No.
All this kind of, it's just stuff that it's like every person sees the film differently. So there was a bit of to and froing about to what extent do we have the kids, to what extent do we... They all, in the end, they wanted more of me, and I was resistant to that just because it felt a bit uncomfortable. They wanted to find a sort of core or stable focus in it, whereas my instinct is to go like, well, you've seen the result, really lateral and associative thinking and editing, so I guess we tried to find a balance of that sense of turbulence and chaos along with giving people enough development of story that it doesn't seem completely random. Hopefully we found that, but not it's not for every viewer, that's for sure.
Yeah. Well, it's I think that things I was joking a moment ago about, you know, maybe to younger audiences it does seem like a sort of ancient history, but more seriously, I think there is space. That's what I kind of particularly admire about having the way that these different narratives relate to one another. So you can actually find the piece that chimes with you, and that might be the family history, it might be the musical history, it might just be the idea of performance and improvisation that you really enjoy. So I think there's lots of options for audiences there, which I really, really like. But obviously it is a film about music, and firstly, I mean, I find that it's quite incredible that such youngsters could have written songs like Rabies is a Killer and Dallas City Ghost. You know, they're quite sophisticated, really, aren't they? You know, so congratulations on that. They're sophisticated, funny, and relevant. So that's
thank you.
Yeah.
Well, I have to confess that the lyrics for Dallas City Ghost were gifted to us by a friend of my mum's, but the others were written by Rabies was definitely a collective of the three of us. Terra Nova, the Love Has Turned to Hate Again, that's all Toby's work, and that's amazing for a 12-year-old as well.
Yeah,
Ian
absolutely.
Curtis or something.
Yeah,
Really.
Good point, yeah.
Ian Curtis from an amazing band called Joy Division, in case you haven't heard. I'll write it down later.
Yeah. Which also, I guess, brings us to Andy Gill, you know, who's sadly now departed. And so you tell us, I mean, obviously we do hear the Gang of Four music in the film, and tell us a little bit about why the Gang of Four were important for you, and you obviously must have known him a little bit to appear in the film in the way he did.
Yeah, good question, core question. So when we were recording Rabies with Hugh Ashton, before we set about recording, he played us this song by Gang of Four called Love Like Anthrax, and he broke it down for us, so he explained what the instrument sounds were, structure, and said, they've got two voices that overlaid, so you might want to try that. He said, it doesn't need to be a straight song, you could have a minute of noise at the start. And that was like my first decent music lesson ever, and it's stuck with me since then, and I do some youth music work, and I still teach that. So we had a little bit of money for licensing music, which was brilliant, because it's otherwise you're into this whole copyright problem. So we were able to get, proper permissions. Toby, Polly, and I both chose 3 songs from that period,
Right. Yeah.
and we were able to license. My original first choice was 12XU by Wire, and we got in touch with Colin Newman that wrote the song, and he was incredibly rude.
Oh.
He wrote back and said, "You just want to take some of my power and put it into your crap." It was just an awful email. So I just thought, screw you. I've been listening to your music since I was 9.
Yeah.
So then I went to Gang of Four. And we got in touch with Andy Gill, and he actually rang me and said, "Oh yeah, what does he want to do?" And I said, "Well, I explained it." And he said, "Well, why don't you come into the studio and we could do a remix?" I was like, "Oh my god,
yeah, amazing!"
And then in the end, we started with that filming of him in the warehouse at Talyard in King's Cross, and then 3 weeks later he was dead.
Must be such
from COVID, because he'd been touring China and Wuhan around there.
Oh no!
So I didn't get to. It doesn't really matter. I mean, he'd lost his life, but I didn't get to do that version. But he was brilliant, actually, to meet and work with. And I would have, based on the music they produced, I would have thought he would be the scarier one.
Yeah, good point. Yeah.
But he wasn't. He was really, really sweet and funny.
Yeah. And then you've got Simon Fisher Turner as a core composer, and in a sense perhaps trying to hold the other musical elements together in a very sort of subtle kind of way, not imposing his particular compositions on the or trying to be in competition with your own work and the work of the other bands you have. So how did you formulate that? How did you work with Simon?
It's very interesting. So Simon, I don't know if you guys have heard of a filmmaker called Derek Jarman. He will appear in your travels, I'm sure. One of the great British artists, filmmakers and activists, writers, gardener,
poet,
all the rest of it.
painter.
It's sort of unavoidable. Anyway, so Simon Fisher-Turner worked very closely with Jarman, and Jarman was one of the people that got me inspired to start films in the first place. So there was a link through that. But in practice, it was very interesting. Simon just said, "Could you just send me like a bunch of source materials?" Like, so I sent him the Hippies recordings, and he said, "Could you just leave me alone?" And I didn't hear anything for a while. All they works really fast, and then he just sent back like shitloads of stuff. Experiments, and then he said, "Just take what you want and edit it how you want." So there wasn't actually any, "Could you make this noise here or that noise there?" He just I sent him a toolkit, and he sent back a massive
incredible.
palette.
I mean, I do think he's an amazing composer. It should be better known than he is.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. Well, I've got a few more questions, but I think it'd be a good time to open up the conversation.
Quiz as well.
Oh yes. Do you want to do the quiz now?
What do you think's in here? This is the first quiz question.
I've got an idea.
Dog.
Yes. What's the dog's name? No. A bit like Snoopy.
Spoons.
Yes.
Right, great. So Helen, if you could.
They haven't won spoons.
No, no. Spoons.
It'd be like, oh, you can take Polly home with you.
There you go. Congratulations.
Hello, spoons.
Well, that deserves a prize, I think. We have here. First prize, going out is a limited edition cassette. I'm sure you probably don't have the means, but maybe your dad does. I don't know. A copy of the Hippies album.
Thank
and
you
on
very
the
much.
other side, a remix that Simon did.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
Well,
I'm not sure how you're going to play a cassette.
That's all right. I'll just have it on my wall.
Yeah.
yeah.
Although it's interesting, the whole technology thing, isn't it? That the old technologies are coming back, and I can understand it with vinyl albums, but I was a bit surprised. But cassettes have quite a cult around them again now.
They do.
Things like film photography as well.
Yeah.
Go on.
It's true. So this is hilarious. Spoons in the Malcolm McLaren suit, I have to say.
Yeah, and I just want to point something out, Helen, because I know you like your fashion and it's all about the hair and everything. Look, my mum sent me a Vivienne Westwood label.
Oh my goodness, that's
Malcolm McLaren and Vivienne
hilarious.
Westwood were partners.
Yeah.
And responsible for so much of British culture.
Exactly, and they're the first kind of supporters of the really formed in some way, moulded, maybe there's the word, the Sex Pistols.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's a Danny Boyle Netflix series, which I think is pretty good. I mean,
I've not seen it.
it's on. Yes, I think it's Netflix.
I've
One
only
of
got
the
cassettes,
streamers.
Helen.
Yeah. But it's a pretty good kind of picture of the times, I think.
Right.
Yeah. So, do you have any questions or anything? Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you have any influences when it came to filmmaking when you made the documentary? Was it something which started from you?
For this
Yeah.
film in particular, yeah, I'd have to go back to when I first started making films. So Derek Jarman to an extent, but then someone I really admire is Agnès Varda, French filmmaker, really brilliant. I would say woefully underrepresented, underrated, underrespected.
Improving
filmmaker.
now, of course.
It's a bit
After
better.
she died about 5 years ago, so now of course that's sort of when people start to take notice of it, isn't it? So there have been a couple of retrospectives at the BFI and places.
Yeah,
a bit more well known now than she was 10 years ago.
But I think it's important to say. I think my first actual turning over of celluloid was stop frame animation, of animating dolls and bits and bobs and fruit and things. That was all inspired by Jan Schwankmeyer, a Czech animator, and then the two US twins at London-based, the Quay brothers, who were sort of basically Jan Schwankmeyer. Yeah, it's bound to involve eating weirdly, things smashing, all sorts of...
Like plasticine heads.
Yeah, and the thing is that what I took from that is this viscerality, so this physicality of image and sound, and that I think you can see here. So it's not specifically like it's more like a technique that I've absorbed or a feeling that I've absorbed.
Okay.
And I'm not a particularly great film watcher, to be honest.
Yeah.
I'm a kind of crap American movies on Amazon person, generally. When I was much younger, I was just, seriously trying to watch, but I find that if I watch a film, it just I'm too absorbent. So music's mostly what I do.
The other big name in the film is Sleaford Mods, who obviously when you filmed them were playing in pubs and are now obviously stadium standard, touring the world to thousands of people. So can you talk a bit about how they ended up getting the film?
I'm just a fan, of quite a lot of different bands, and they came to Edinburgh, and I just thought, and this was like way before we shot most of the other stuff, and I just thought, they encapsulate some of the energy that I remember from the late 70s, early 80s, essentially. It just seemed to me like they're the only people at that point around doing that, and that's sort of almost, it's a bit like sort of punk music hall or something, and lots of sort of weird kind of movements and tweak, just sort of very, very particular kind of energy, and that's what I was drawn to, and that's how they then kind of ended up in the.
Do they know about the film?
Yeah. I mean, everything there has been done like properly above board. They didn't care about the licensing. They said, we don't care. Do what you want with it. They literally didn't care.
Well, that's the proper punk ethos, really, isn't it?
It was like, do what you want.
Wire. Yeah. I'll ask you just one more quick question, and then perhaps we could just go to the bar and carry on chatting. But it just occurred to me with filmmakers present. You obviously, like many filmmakers, started making shorter work, and then made this is your third feature.
It is.
So I think it might be just useful, maybe for you, to hear, because that's not an easy journey to make. And so how did you do that?
How did I do that? I was in Glasgow. My mum, again, a big influence on me, obviously sent me a book called I Cycled Into the Arctic Circle, written by a profoundly deaf man from North East Scotland who did what he said on his book, Cycled Into the Arctic Circle. Not
film's called Dummy Jim.
Yeah, and that eventually,
after
13 years, became my second feature. But because that took so long, I got really frustrated. We went through all the sort of standard. I went on a script writing course. I did all the things. We went around film markets, tried to sell the idea. It just went on and on. I was like, this isn't filmmaking. This is bureaucracy. What's going on here? And out of frustration, I set off with my then girlfriend Lucy and our dog Tippy, and we walked the 100 miles Southdown Way. Filming along the way, just like open to shooting things, seeing what happens, and that became my first feature called Follow the Master. So I actually made my first longer form, I would call it, because it's like 73 minutes.
Right,
Film out of frustration with the process of trying to make the proper film.
I mean, I think that's...
I've still not made a proper film, by the way.
Well, it depends what kind of film you want to make, but I think it's like I think the thing is to make, isn't it? I think that's don't be put off. You take a cheap camera and just go and film what you know and see what happens.
Absolutely.
If you're struggling with getting support or
Absolutely.
funding or finding producers or whatever, is just keep making stuff.
Best camera is the one you have on you.
Yeah.
Shoot first, ask questions later. Just shoot it anyway.
That's a good note to end on, I think.
But very quickly.
Oh yes.
Got another. This is for you, Helen.
Oh, thank you. Oh, lovely.
Thank you.
Oh,
so we have two remaining cassettes. So the first question is, what is the name of the drummer in Generation Riot?
Shids. Thank you.
Okay, and this is a slightly more difficult one. You see this tattoo on my arm? This appears in the film on the front cover of a book. What is the name of the book? got a little clue. See, I'm really prepared, you know. A book written by this fella. Not literally this fella.
A tiny book.
Can anyone tell who that is? Okay, it's Oscar Wilde.
Oh right. Oh, I
This
can't.
is the
yes.
Reading Connection.
Right.
Dorian Gray.
No.
Ballad of Reading Gaol.
No. So it's a fairy tale. Has a swallow in.
Oh, I remember the book now because it said about the prince and the swallow in the text.
Prince and the Swallow.
No.
The prince and the.
Okay, well, all right. It was the Happy Prince, but I'll give you another
Yeah.
question.
Oh,
What
cool.
is the name of the bass player in Generation Riot?
I know.
Sorry.
Toxic.
Toxic.
Yay!
I've actually got a cassette player that works,
Well, there you go. Ooh,
and I
bendy
play
chairs.
cassettes. There's a band that I discovered that only released their new music on cassette, so you have to buy it off their website, and they send you the cassette through.
Oh really?
Yeah.
Can I ask a question quick?
Yes.
So, like, similar point to yours, but how do you, like, fund something that seems so personal? Like, how do you sell that movie?
That's a really good question. Yeah, it's a lot of trust and faith involved, and it's because I had built up a number of years of successful, well, not all successful, but mostly successful shorts, and then had demonstrated that I could. So the second feature, Dummy Jim, I mean, that was working with an entire village community, and I demonstrated that I could handle that and pull it off and make a successful product essentially from it. So there was an amount of trust had been built up.
Okay.
But yeah, there were questions. It's like, well, who's going to watch a film about this guy that no one's heard of? And you know, reasonable question.
So I noticed one of the, I think, execs producers, Mark Thomas. Is that the Mark Thomas?
If it's the same, the Mark Thomas,
The-
I'm thinking of
The sort of political activist comedian. Mark
No,
Thomas.
no,
Oh, right. No.
no.
Mm.
No, he calls it. Yeah, he would call himself a Mandarin for Scottish screen.
Ah, I see. Yeah, different person altogether.
Yeah. Well, you know, remember to shop at Fabricland.
Yeah. Yes, get this particular.
And
It'd be
that's-
great to have a suit like that.
You're welcome
wouldn't it?
to meet Spoons in the bar. He doesn't bite.
He's looking in pretty good shape, really. I think.
He's not bad, is he? I mean,
Well, he
it's-
looks like he's been bitten a bit, perhaps by one of the other dog squad members.
Yeah, I mean, there's a bit of this area needs some attention.
Either that or it's the drugs habit.
And I can show you his. He does walking,
Oh,
and in fact, when he doesn't have trousers on, there's a whole other.
oh, that's really cute. Oh, he's delightful.
Right.
Well, thank you so much for coming.
Yeah.